typical open source guy might have 3 or 4 computers, maybe a dozen if they're lucky. I've got, a half dozen,
Yeah.
but is that enough to load the data set from OpenAI and train? No, not even close. I'm nowhere near that.
Welcome to Practical AI, everybody. My name's Jeff. I'm here with Peter Lin. We are sponsored by Pocket AI. Pocket AI is a tool that you can use to edit the weights of your model. With Pocket AI, you can prune over 60% of the weights in your model without decreasing accuracy. In fact, you can increase accuracy. Peter, second episode in a row that we're going to talk about Google. We're going to move away from quantum computing, though, and talk about Gemini or Gemini 2. What did Google do that's important?
So Google just released some early results for Gemini 2, and it shows that it's beating OpenAI. It's beating the O1.
Okay, so it's even beating their new one.
Yes, yep.
And OpenAI's in the lead, at least by most people's definitions. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say definitely by revenue. They're the one that is making the most money. I mean, Anthropic just signed a deal with AWS. So we're going to see them start to make a good amount of money with that partnership. Google doesn't report their revenue from Gemini, so we don't know. But so yeah, right now, based on money, OpenAI is number 1.
Okay, and are these entities starting to specialize in anything? Like, is OpenAI going this direction, more commercial, Anthropic, more government defense? Like, is any of that happening, or are they basically just building the same thing?
That's hard to say. I mean, they're all trying to monetize because obviously you have to. If you want to keep training your models and keep training bigger and bigger models, you need money to do that. And so obviously all of them are trying to monetize it somehow because you can't keep building the next best version without money. So yeah, so they're all doing similar things.
And why do you think, or how do you think that Google caught up? What did they do differently, or what did they?
I don't know the details. My best guess, it's the guys at DeepMind that kind of hunter down, improve their data, tweak the architecture, probably found better ways to automate the data cleansing, data kind of quality issue. And then that's what got them to kind of to this level. Because I think before, everyone was still using pretty much the same transformer architecture. So I mean, that was pretty much the same. It was really the data that was the difference.
Okay. So in that sense, your data quality, the quality of your data and the amount of data that you have is right now at least outweighs anything you can do to like the algorithm, the layers of your model, any of that. The data itself seems to be, the intellectual property that's changing the game for these people.
It is. And it has been since GPT-2 came out, right? Because people said, hey, OpenAI, we want to see what data you use to train it. And OpenAI's response was, well, that's IP. We can't share it. That's because the data is everything at this point.
Got it. And what did they do? What measurements were used to determine that? Yeah, they indeed.
Some of the usual standard benchmarks that Meta quoted, that OpenAI quotes. So they basically score the top score on most of them. And not by little either. I mean, some of them were pretty significant. So really, they cleaned their data up. They polished up their data set to get better results.
Okay.
Yep.
And then how often are these, are they training? They're going to catch up,
Yeah. So they're constantly training, right? The minute they train the base model, they switch over to do the alignment part. And so once it's done, they start immediately on the next one.
Okay.
Yep.
And are the benchmarks now starting to include, music and video? Is it everything, or is it just LLM text?
It's LLM based right now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, here's a little video here that we're watching. All right, so what does one have to do to catch up? So now let's say you're Anthropic and you want to go into the lead. Is it just get better data?
It's not necessarily get better data. So I mean, historically, the problem in machine learning is building the ideal data set was an art, right? And so for for the last 10 years, it's been, well, because it's an art, and there are very few individuals on the planet that know that art, right? It's like, it's black magic. They said, well, just throw volume at it, and that'll overcome the art part. And so that works for a while, up to GPT-3 and 4. And they realized, oh, actually, you know what? We still need some art. Yeah.
Now, do some entities like Google has YouTube, they have obviously a ton of data from, and maybe even from Gmail. We don't know, right? But do some entities have a clear advantage on the data side? Tesla's got, all their video data. Microsoft has tons of data, Copilot coding, all that stuff. Are some at a clear disadvantage and are some at a clear advantage?
No one really knows. So more data is not better. That's been a myth promoted by Elon and other people for a long time because that was to their advantage. Say we have more data, therefore we're going to win. But reality is more data just means there's more stuff to weed through to find the good data.
Okay. So it's got to be the right data.
Yeah.
And that's the art.
That's the art. Yep.
So at least for now, Google is ahead in figuring out what the right data is to get results that do well against the benchmark.
Right. Which doesn't mean it's good for general use case, but it's at least good for benchmarks.
Okay. How does open source keep up with this if data is such an important thing? And it seems like of the threats out there, one of the big players would probably have access to good data to turn into the right data before the open source community would.
In reality, this doesn't work that way. When you have too much data, what ends up happening is that becomes your crutch, and you're not forced to have to figure out like, okay, I don't have the whole internet. I just have 10 million rows of data. How do I figure out what's the best set for my 10 million, right? When you've got the whole internet, you don't even think about how to pick out the best ideal set because you've got so much data. And then even weeding through it would take you months or years.
So your limited team uses the volume of data as a crutch and skips over essential components of the art of data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas your infinite team, not infinite, but your extremely large crowdsourced team on open source players, they have no crutch and they have to go all in on the art of the data.
Well, they have to, right? Because they don't have infinite resources, infinite storage for the whole internet.
Yeah. Okay.
And your typical open source guy might have 3 or 4 computers, maybe a dozen if they're lucky. I've got, a half dozen.
Yeah.
But is that enough to load the data set from OpenAI and train? No, not even close. I'm nowhere near that.
Yeah. So it has to be the right data. It has to be tight. It has to be good code. It has to run efficiently.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so what's your prediction here? What do you think? You've always kind of been in the Google and Apple camp in terms of who's going to win long term. First of all, are you still there? And secondly, is this now where just Google just kind of runs away with this, or do you think it's going to be?
No, I would say, I've never thought that. I'm definitely biased in favor of open source. So my stance has always been open source will win in the end.
Yeah.
In the short term, yeah, Google and Apple and OpenAI will win in the short term because they're hoarding all the GPUs, all the data centers, all the electricity, all the data. But at some point, and I think we already crossed that point where an open model like Meta's Llama and others, Minstrel and so on, they're getting even. So their advantage is basically gone at this point.
Yeah. Not to mention the Chinese with their open source platform as well,
Yep.
right? Yeah. Good. Well, this is a good update. Google is probably getting the egg off their face from their sort of debacle about a half a year ago, right? 6 months ago when everyone was making fun of them. But don't sleep on some of these companies, right? They're working on something at all times.
Yeah, well, they've got a lot of resources, so that was their advantage.
They sure do. All right, Peter. Thanks for a nice little lesson here on Google. Remember, you can also listen to Practical AI on Spotify, so you can tune in on the go. Thanks again for listening, and we will be back next time with another episode. Take care.